Hi, if you're watching this, you're probably about to take the ASVAB or you're about to take the PICAT. And although there already are several really great videos on YouTube covering both of these, they all cover different things. And I recently just took my PICAT slash verification on May 18th. So I kind of wanted to give you really recent experience knowledge on what it was like for me. Now, I highly recommend unless you've really studied up and you really know that you're at your A game and a timer doesn't bother you at all, I would highly recommend taking the PICAT. You're going to go to your recruiter's office. They're probably going to recommend you take the PICAT anyways because they know people normally score higher on it. They're going to ask you to like leave your phone outside of the room that they bring you into. They're not going to pat you down and search you, but they're not going to let you bring a calculator in your phone, a list full of math formulas. And again, I highly recommend the PICAT because although while I was studying, I tried to, towards the end of like my studying, like when I was trying to get like a little bit more hardcore about it, I tried to start timing myself, especially like on the math. There's just something about the timer that kills me. And there's some people I've met that that's just not an issue to them. They're not phased by it. But for some reason, especially with math, all of a sudden you put a timer on it and it's like I can't even read the problem. So, anyways, I studied for about a year. And there's reasons behind that. I'm a little older looking to enlist, so a lot of this stuff was really not fresh for me, like it might be for some of you watching that like are just getting out of high school or about to get out of high school. And also, like, I wasn't great in high school. I didn't care a lot about my studies, especially like, the math and stuff. I just, there are other priorities I had. But like for about a year solid, and I'm not saying you have to study for a year, this is just like my journey. I, for about a year, every day, for 2 to 3 hours a day, the majority of what I would study was the math because the math is what I really struggled with. The English, like the paragraph comprehension and the word knowledge, most of us have a pretty decent vocabulary and most of us know how to read at a pretty average proficiency. So, like, you should be good to go on that. Does it help to study for those? Absolutely. But, anyways, we'll get back to that. Moving back to the PICAT specifically. Anyways, I highly recommend that you take the PICAT because, again, the timer's not a factor. The potential for you to score higher is a lot, in my opinion. But so after you take the PICAT, your recruiter is going to schedule you to go to MEPS and take your verification test. Yes, the rumors are true. There is a chance that you could be like randomly selected as like the 5% that they like make take the full ASVAB anyways. Yes, you could fail your verification for because nerves or you for many reasons. And you have to take the whole ASVAB again, but that just is what it is. Most of you are going to go take your verification the day after you took the PICAT or just like 2 or 3 days after you took the PICAT. And it's 25 questions. It's a solid 25 questions. And what they're going to do is, I would say, about 75 to 80% of the questions out of those 25 are going to be questions you already answered. Not necessarily questions that are like the same sort of formulaicness and different answers. A lot of them are going to be straight up the same questions. And you're going to be really tempted if you like remembered some of those questions after you took the PICAT at the office and like kind of wanted to see like if you got those right when you went back home, you're going to be really tempted to correct yourself. I couldn't resist. There was definitely like one question like having to do with like science that like I knew I got wrong and I knew the answer, but I was just like nervous. And so there was one question I knew I got wrong that I decided to select right, but I stopped myself after that. I was like, I am not fucking this up. And the other thing they're going to do is they're going, again, a bulk of the 25 questions is going to be questions you've already answered. And you should just have, if you got them right the first time, you should know the answer to them. And if there's questions that like you knew that you selected option C or whatever, just go ahead and select it again because, like other people have already covered, the verification isn't like a second chance for you to do even better. They want to see that this little mock test is pretty much summarizes what you got on the full PICAT. It is also timed, but it's only 25 questions. So it kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off. Another thing they're going to do on the PICAT is if there were in your line scores, like your job scores, like you probably already know because you've been watching a lot of ASVAB videos, that like the AFQT is comprised of the word knowledge, paragraph comprehension, the math knowledge, and the arithmetic reasoning. Those qualify you for if the military deems you, smart enough to even get in. And obviously, you want to score as high as you can in that category, even though the different all the branches have like their minimums, but like there are jobs that like want you to do pretty well in terms of the AFQT. And when you start to go look at, your MOSs and your rates of the jobs that you really want, there's like this weird formula that like different categories of the AFQT and the job scores need to add up to a certain amount of points to qualify you for certain jobs. Like if you want to go nuke in Navy, there's a few of those categories need to add up to like over like 200 and something points to qualify for that job. It sounds a little intimidating to figure out, but it's really easy. You just have to hop on Google and ask your branch what job you want and what the scores you need to qualify for that. And obviously, the higher that number is for you, when they're looking to fill slots for boot camp and your first school after boot camp, you're gonna be more of a desirable candidate if you overall have higher scores in all those categories. Like there may be several of you that totally qualify for the job, but they're probably going to lean towards the person who qualifies the most based on the numbers. So anyways, back to the PICAT. Another thing they're going to do to you is they're going to take some of the job scores you scored really well in. Like I scored really well in like the mechanical comprehension and like the auto and shop. So what they're going to do is they're going to take the categories you scored really high in when it comes to the line scores, the job scores, and they're going to throw in a couple of questions that are like pretty advanced that you didn't get the first time you took the test, which really shouldn't be that big of a deal, because like I'm really passionate about mechanics and cars and anything with an engine. So when they threw a couple extra car questions in there, it was really easy for me to be like, oh, I still know the answers to these. So be prepared that again, 75% to 80% of the questions are going to be the questions you already answered. So you should be able to like breeze right through those. But then they're going to switch it up on you and take the line scores that you scored really high in and add some questions that you didn't get before that are fairly advanced to kind of like push you a little further and really test that like you were, proficient in that knowledge. Like I said before in the video, it is timed, but the fact that like the questions to be so fresh in your head, you get to use a lot of that time on the other questions that they're throwing at you that are new, which again are like the minority of the questions you're going to get on it. I think it took me, from 20 to 25 minutes to do my verification. It was really quick for me. And again, your recruiter is going to want you to go take that verification ASAP so that you can have that same experience. And You know, I was trying to score in like the 70 percentiles. Not to toot my own horn, but I ended up getting a 99 in the AFQT. I ended up scoring really high in all the job categories I wanted to. So depending on what happens for me next with my enlistment journey, there's a lot of options open to me. And you've probably been feeling like you've been lectured by a lot of these videos out there about the ASVAB and about your journey into enlistment if that's what you're trying to do. And take it take it in, because that ASVAB, it's like it is a hard test and it's not a hard test. Like a lot of the stuff are things that I've met people that really, they were good with in high school and they really don't struggle with, and they thought the test was a breeze. I would say for an average number of us, like, yeah, if you want to score really high, like in the 90s, you're going to want to really invest some time into studying. So, like, at the end of this video, which we're approaching, let's go into some suggestions about studying real quick. Again, for me personally, and we're all different, but for me, I was really out of practice with a lot of this stuff. Some of the stuff I was lucky with were like, I really like to read. So like when you read a lot, especially, I guess it just doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction, but I like to read a lot of fiction. So there's like always new words I was being exposed to, and I'd want to like look them up and know what they mean. So if I try to use them in a sentence around people, I didn't seem like an idiot. So most of us have a pretty decent vocabulary, and most of us should know how to read fairly well, like on an average level. The weird thing about the paragraph comprehension is it's really not testing your ability to necessarily read. It's testing your ability to pick out the information that they're trying to get you to pick out. And sometimes it makes complete sense as to what that information is. And sometimes you have to fight the instinct to know that, like, based off the question they're asking about the paragraph you just read, you're like, I know this answer makes the most sense to me, but you gotta just stop yourself and be like, I have to answer this based off of what I think they want me to say, if that makes any sense at all. Because I know for me with the paragraph comprehension, I could get like really poetic and be like, well, this is really what they're asking me. But I would stop myself and be like, how they're wording this question, I know they're looking for this specific answer and for me to think this way. The other thing too with the ASVAB and the PICAT, I wouldn't, unless you really just want to impress everyone and yourself, I wouldn't worry about studying every job score. I mean, like for me and the things I want to do in the military, there are specific categories I really wanted to score high in, which was the shop knowledge, the automotive knowledge, the mechanics knowledge. I didn't really care so much about the electrical and the general science. I scored pretty well in them because a lot of it is like basic stuff you can brush up on and just kind of like get in your head. But really figure out what you want to do. Unless you are that rare soul that just like wants to go in and like the thought of being like undesignated and having the job being picked for you is just like okay with you, take some soul searching time, talk to some vets, hop on some forums, do some research, watch some like YouTube testimonial videos about what these jobs are going to be like, and especially what you can do with them like once you get out. So there might only be like three categories in the job scores that you need to score like pretty well in. So like it doesn't really make sense for you to devote like brain space and time into like, acing the electrical section if you really don't want anything to do with being an electrician in the military. And there are some really great free resources for you out there. I completely relied on free resources. I did end up buying the ASVAB for Dummies book, and it's a really great resource. it may not be the best for you if you really hate using a textbook. For some of us, when all of a sudden you're trying to learn from a book and you're trying to read it and absorb it and like be your own teacher, like it's just not fun and people don't like it and they're not excited about it and it's boring. But it has really great practice questions. It has really good breakdowns of what you need to know. And a lot of the breakdowns of the knowledge and the questions are mirroring what the ASVAB's going to be like. Because like there's all this math, right? But not all of that's going to be on the ASVAB, you know. So they're going to like when it comes to the formulas, like they're going to pretty much throw out like the most common formulas for you to learn that are going to be on the ASVAB. You don't need to learn all of them. Like if you want to learn how to find the surface area of a sphere and the volume of a pyramid, like go ahead, lock them in. The chances of you experiencing those on the ASVAB are really slim. So ASVAB for Dummies, the book it's a great resource. It's really cheap. I picked up a used copy on eBay for like less than 20 bucks. They also have an app, and the app might be more streamlined for you because it's just a bunch of practice questions that you can like start quizzing yourself on, and then use other study materials, and then like a week later come back to the ASVAB app, and those questions aren't going to be so fresh anymore. So it's like, yes, if you just sat down with that app and memorized all the answers to those questions, you're really not going to be helping yourself out that much. But like, if you use it as like a another test you can take, another practice you can take, and then kind of put it down for a week and then like go back to it. It's a pretty good resource. I do think it costs like some money. It's like $5 a month or something like that. But I mean, like, whatever. If you're really serious about this and you're really on a budget, it's a good resource. YouTube, the three people I really recommend. Everyone's going to tell you about Grammar Hero. He's really great. He does really awesome basic breakdowns. A lot of his content is free. You get access to even more of it for, again, I think it's like a $5 a month Google Play subscription. He really, really helped me. It was huge. Like just being able to like sit down a couple hours a day and like go through his practice tests where he's gonna give you time to answer, and then he's gonna give you a breakdown of how he would solve the problem, each problem. And then he even has, playlists and episodes he's made that are really like more teaching. Like let's not just like do a problem and a breakdown, but like let's do a bunch of breakdown and then we'll get to some problems. But he really explains a lot, and you could probably learn 90% of what he has to offer just through his free content. There's also a guy on YouTube called, his channel's called Duran Learning. He's really chill and he's really laid back and he's like very personable. And he makes really great content. He was another creator that like, all of his free classes, all of his free content really helped me. And then there's another guy called Colfax, like Colfax Math. And he's another guy that's just like making like 100% free content for the ASVAB. And all three of these creators cover, all the categories: the math knowledge, the paragraph comprehension, the arithmetic reasoning. I really needed them for the math. So that's what they really helped me with. But like just know that like they also do breakdowns of all the other categories. Like if you really don't have that big of a vocabulary, if you really struggle with like picking out information from a paragraph based off of the questions they're asking you about that paragraph, you might want to brush up on that stuff. But it's amazing that there are these people out there that are spending a lot of their own time just to make this content to help you with this test so you can lock in. And if you're trying to get into the military, not only can you have an adventure and meet people and do all sorts of stuff, but like you could learn a skill you never even dreamed of being able to learn. And once you get out of your commitment, you could be really setting yourself up for the rest of your life. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to think. I think I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to share with you. You know, again, I highly recommend taking the PICAT. I think it's the way to go. I really don't know why, other than the military's desire to really really be quick with time and stuff. Like, I really kind of think they should just like make everyone like, why not just everyone take the PICAT like at the recruiter's office or whatever. And I just feel like they're limiting themselves with like the timed aspect of the ASVAB. I feel like there's a lot of people that probably score a lot lower than they would have. So yeah, take the PICAT. Don't be afraid of the verification. I'm really glad I went that way. It is also like a little nerve wracking. Like, you're at MEPS. It's kind of like a very like, semi serious facility and situation. And oh well. But anyways, I wish you the best of luck. I hope some of this video is helpful for you. I would take your studying seriously, especially if you need like a lot of brushing up. I studied like every day. And at the beginning, like there were some days I was studying like 4 hours a day because like I needed it. Like I really needed to like take myself back to school. Now, once you start to like get some of this stuff like back in your mind and you're starting to like, cover more advanced topics and you have a lot more confidence, you almost don't need to like classroom study as much as you just need to find like new problems to to solve. Like I eventually got to a place with the math where like the last couple months of me studying leading up to going and taking the PICAT, I didn't really need to like be in like classroom environments with someone explaining something to me. I'm like I needed new problems that I'd never seen before so I could like see how quickly I could figure out a problem that I'd never attempted to figure out before. Another thing too, and I'm sorry I saved this for the end. I should have put it in the middle or something. Grammar Hero. Until something changes with how they do the ASVAB, it's very obvious to me that Grammar Hero took the PICAT. And a lot of his lessons with like the math, and I'm assuming it's with the other topics, but again, like I just needed him for the math. A lot of the questions he had were questions I saw on the PICAT. So I'm not saying you can watch all of his videos and memorize every answer to every question and then just like go cheat on the PICAT, but like I remember like when I went to take the PICAT, I was like, I know this question. I've like solved this question like 17 times at this point, if not more. Like I know the answer to this question. I'm like, huh, like of course he would have, like anyone can take the PICAT at home. Like you just need to punch your social security number in and take it. So like with some of his lesson plans and stuff, like he's literally showing you questions that are going to like 8 out of 10 be on this test. So he's a really great resource to use. And he's really gonna, he really like figured out the science, especially with the math, to show you what you really need to like lock in. Like this is what the ASVAB is going to be expecting you to know. Like you don't need to know trigonometry. You don't need to know how to do all this stuff. And another thing that like you've probably seen in these videos is like again, like you probably already know this, but like with the ASVAB test, like the first couple of questions, super easy. And you need to get those correct so that they'll start bumping you up to medium questions. And then you need to get those medium questions correct so they'll start bumping you up to harder questions. And once you reach those harder questions, all of a sudden, like, don't slack off, but you can be pretty confident that, like, I'm probably going to be scoring pretty well in these categories if I'm getting these really hard questions now. And I think people get intimidated sometimes when they hear that, but, like, relax because the majority of the questions for each category are going to be easy to medium. So, like, the minority of the questions are going to be the really hard ones. But once you get to those, you know that you're going to be scoring pretty well. And it does also have like a part of the program that, like, if you get a question wrong, then all of a sudden the next question is going to be like slightly easier to kind of like help you bump back up. But, anyways, study your hearts out. I would take one day off a week. You can burn yourself out, and then your study sessions you won't retain as much as you can. So like normally I would like study 2 to 3 hours, sometimes for every single day, and then like Sundays I would take off and like make sure I like went and hung out with friends or did like something relaxing. And it did help because there were some weeks I tried to study like 7 days a week, and then like by like the 12th day in a row I'd be like sitting there being like, man, like why like did I just study for 3 hours and I felt like I retained none of this. You're burnt out, your brain needs a damn break. So good luck. I hope this helps someone out there. I hope you nail the test. I hope you get what you want. And I don't know, see you on the other side. I hope all of us that are trying to make this enlistment journey can be successful at it. The next step for me is trying to get medically cleared. I'm an older guy. I've had, some health problems at this point in my life, and I'm pretty nervous about being able to physically get through basic without messing myself up. So, good luck. I hope you get what you want, and if you got any questions, I'll answer them in the comments. Have a good night, everyone.